Faith is one of those words that Christians use all the time, and for good reason. The word faith shows up well over 200 times in the New Testament. But for people who like to use this word so much, it's quite surprising how few of us really understand what faith actually means. There's this notion that faith and science are two different approaches to knowledge, and you have to choose between one or the other. If you go the route of faith, that means you believe without any rational basis for your belief, and that's like a virtue for some reason, and you might call this fideism. But if you go the route of science, that means that you're logical, you're rational, you like to think through stuff, and you don't just believe because somebody told you to. But does faith really contradict science like this? If you look up the word faith in a dictionary, you'll probably see faith defined as confident belief in someone or something. You might even see that faith is taken without proof or evidence. We tend to think of faith this way, that it's a blind approach to knowledge, it doesn't work with evidence, and if you tried to provide evidence, that evidence would take away our ability to exercise faith. Science, on the other hand, is all about the evidence. So if faith is belief without evidence, and science is belief with evidence, then yes, faith and science contradict. And that's a standard definition of faith, and it works for a lot of religions out there. But it doesn't work for Christianity. In fact, if you really studied the concept of faith in the Bible, it becomes apparent that faith is very different than its typical definition. What you discover is that the Christian view of faith is not blind, nor does it fight for the same kind of stuff that science is concerned about. Let me explain. We might be inclined to think that faith is blind because the word faith is contrasted with sight in the New Testament. 2 Corinthians 5:7, for we walk by faith, not by sight. You also have Hebrews 11:1, which says that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. But to take these verses and to argue for a modern concept of blind faith is mistaken. For instance, the author of Hebrews is not talking about blind faith at all, and I can give you two good reasons. First, if you look up the word conviction here, you will find that conviction is far more than simple belief. The original word in Greek is elenchos. According to our best lexicons, elenchos is the act of presenting evidence for the truth of something, or the evidence normally based on argument or discussion as to the truth or reality of something. It is by this conviction that we are able to speak into the reality of things not seen. We don't do this blindly. Second, if you just keep reading, you will find that multiple examples of faith are presented to us, and it's not what you might think. By faith Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark. By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. In these examples of faith, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and others are not trying to believe in God or some kind of doctrine. That is not the things unseen for them. Rather, they are trusting in the promises of God and putting that into action. And so faith is much more than just believing. Faith is a forward-looking trust in God and a posture of obedience. The things unseen here are the promises of God which are yet to be fulfilled. Since science doesn't try to do that for us, it doesn't get in the way of faith. But let's take this a little bit further. If faith is to be understood like trust, well then the object of our faith must be trustworthy. And so when Christians talk about things like faith in God, faith in the Bible, faith in the death and resurrection of Jesus, we are talking about things that we believe to be trustworthy. We have reasons for trusting and acting upon these things. They might be historical reasons, they might be philosophical reasons, they might be experiential reasons, they might also be scientific reasons. And so things like science and evidence do not contradict faith, they actually help us in our faith. They give us all the more reason for trusting and acting upon the promises of God. Listen to John Lennox in his book, God's Undertaker. He says this, admittedly, there unfortunately are people professing faith in God who take an overly anti-scientific and obscurantist viewpoint. But that does not alter the fact that mainstream Christianity will insist that faith and evidence are inseparable. Indeed, faith is a response to evidence, not a rejoicing in the absence of evidence. He goes on to say, it is important to stress this because influential authors such as Richard Dawkins will insist on conceiving of God as an explanatory alternative to science, an idea that is nowhere to be found in theological reflection of any depth. In this video, I asked if faith contradicts science. I could also ask if the Bible contradicts science. That's a video for another time. For now, I argued that reason and science do not contradict faith. In fact, I said that reason and science can help us in our faith. But there is one more thing, and this is important. Reason and science alone do not get us to faith. The Bible is clear that we need God's Holy Spirit to help us understand these things. We need God to help us place our trust in these things. And so if you're wondering about things like Christianity or God, try talking to God about it. Ask for His help. Pray, even if it seems totally weird. Just try it for a while and then talk to some Christian friends about it. See what happens. But don't think that you have to reject scientific knowledge or experiential knowledge or philosophical knowledge or any of that. God often uses these things to help us see that He is real, He is good, and He's worth everything. Thanks for watching.